guys, the first thing I'm doing, I'm marking my zipper allowance from the top to the bottom, which is 1.5 inch. Kindly note that this dress is a two-piece dress, which means it has a seam in the waist area. It's not a one-piece dress, it's a two-piece dress. That's why you'll see me drafting the top part separately and the lower part, which is the skirt part, separately. Then I'll just be joining them together later. So this one that I'm just ruling is my zipper allowance. So I'm just folding it in before I start marking my vertical measurements on the top part. This is the top part of the dress. So you're gonna mark a straight line at the top of your pattern paper. We cannot use the original one because it's never straight, so just use your ruler and create a straight line or draw a straight line on the top part of your pattern like that. Then I'll just be putting in my vertical measurements. I'll start with my bust point from the shoulder to bust point. Then I'll be marking my bodice length, that is the shoulder to waist. Then I'll just mark these points like twice so that when I'm drawing in my straight line, it will be straight. Because I don't want to slant my points. I just want to get a straight line. That's why you see me marking 2 points. Then going to mark in my neck width, which is 3 inches, and neck depth. For the back I'm using 2 inches, and for the front I'm going down by 3 inches. Then I'll just be connecting these points with a curve. I went in with the pencil first because obviously I don't have a curved rule. Then I'll just label my back and front neckline like so. At this point I'm going to get my shoulder measurement. Then I'll be dividing the measurement by 2. So for my case I have 7.5 inch. I'm just gonna mark that on the line that I created earlier on top of the pattern like so. From that point that I've marked up there, I'm now going to go down by 1 inch to form my shoulder slant. Yes, I always say our shoulders are not entirely straight, so that's why we are slanting like that. At this point I'm marking in my armhole circumference divided by 2. Then I'll just getting my point like so. I'm then going to join that to the shoulder slant, to the point I marked while slanting my shoulder. Then I'll just square this line out to get the line where I'll be drawing in my arm thigh. Yes, so that line that is squared out will form our chest line. So I'm just going to extend this in dotted. I'll be extending it all the way to the middle, to the side, actually to the side, with dotted lines. On this chest line I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. So I'll be marking the point on the chest line, not on the bust line. Okay, so that's why I extended the line in dotted, so that I can be able to put my tape straight without slanting it. Then after marking the point, I'm adding 1.5 inch sewing allowance or seam allowance. The next thing I'm doing, I'm getting the midpoint of my armhole depth. Then from the midpoint I'm going in with 1/2 inch. Okay, to get my armhole curve. Okay, so I'll just be connecting this point to the edge of the shoulder. Then from the lower part I'm going to connect it to the point that I marked earlier with a curve. You are then marking your nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. Okay, measure from your one nipple to the other Then if you're getting 8 like me, divide that 8 by 2 and mark these points on the bust point and on the waistline. Then connect this with a straight line. This is where we want to create our dart. Okay, so from the top on this waistline, you're going to go out by half an inch on both sides like this. Then from the bust point, go down by 1 inch. Then connect this point to the dart legs on the waistline. Now you're going to mark in your waist circumference divided by 4. Okay, mark that point there. Then as usual, you know the dart will take in 1 inch, so I'm going to replace that, the 1 inch that the dart will be taking in once I stitch it down. Then I'll remember to add my 1.5 inch sewing allowance at the end like this. After joining the side like this, the next thing I want to do is to add my allowance at the bottom part of this bodice. So I'll just add in my 1 inch allowance like so. You're then going to get your shoulder measurement, whatever you have here where I'm measuring, divide it by 2. Okay, this point that where you see my tape, that's the point that I've measured, then I've divided it by 2. Then just connecting this to the bust point like that, because I want this top to have a seam here. Princess dart, is this a princess dart? Yes, a shoulder dart, okay. Yes, so yeah, now from the tip of my neckline where you see my tape, I'm going to mark 4 inches down. Now at this point, this is you are just basically determining how deep you want your shoulder to be. Okay, so I'm just marking 4 inches so that by the time I'm sewing it will be 5 inches there. So if you want yours deeper, go deeper. If you want yours not so deep, go up. Okay, but I think 4 inches is just okay, so I marked 4 inches. Then this will be my new neckline. Yeah, so I'm just writing in for you, my people, to understand that we are getting rid of the top necklines and this is our new neckline. So this being an off shoulder, I'm going to, from my armhole, I'm going to go in by 1 inch because I need it to be extremely fitting, to fit me closely, because it's an off shoulder, so you just want it tight on your body at the top. Then at this 1 inch point, I'm going to connect that down to blend into the old armhole the way you seen me doing. And that becomes our new armhole. Okay, now you see this is the, when you open up the zip allowance, that becomes the back pattern. So I'll just extend this. Guys, we're just going to use one pattern, but it will be used to cut the front and to cut the back. So I'm just extending the neckline, and I'll also extend my hemline, not the hemline, my this point that has dots, this line, I'm extending that. Then I'll be cutting this out because we basically done from with the upper part of the dress. So this is how my patterns are looking. So the side front will still be used to cut the side back, and for the front I'll fold it in like this and use it to cut the front, and for the back I'll open the allowance and use it to cut the back when open like this. So that's it for the top part. Moving on to the skirt, which is the lower part of the dress, I'm just going to mark in my 1.5 inch zipper allowance, because by now we know that our dress will be having a zipper at the back. So I'm just going to mark in my zip allowance 1.5 inch from the top to the bottom of this pattern. Now grab your straight ruler and rule across the top part of the pattern like so. Now this line becomes our waistline. Now from the waistline I'm going to mark down waist to hip measurement. You measure from your waist to your hip, then mark that point like that. Mark in your points like twice so that you can get a straight line, because if you don't, you might end up with a slanting line which will not give you a perfect outcome. Okay, so just mark the points as many as you can. No one is going to judge you. Yes, now this becomes my hip line, while the one on the top is the waistline. Now from the waistline, mark your length, the length of your dress from the waistline to where you want your dress to reach. Just measure from your waist to where you want your dress to reach. Okay, if you want it mini, just go ahead. I think I'm working here with 26 inches from the waist. Yes, so that becomes my full length. That is the full length of the skirt part, not the whole dress. So that's the full length of the skirt part. At this point, place your nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 on the waistline. Okay, then from that point you're going to go down by 5 inches from that point that you mark. Then connect this with a straight line. This is where I'm going to create my dart, the dart that will be on the lower part of the dress. So at the waistline, I'm still going to go out by half an inch on both sides. Then I'll be connecting the dart legs to the 5-inch point that I marked down this line to form my dart. Now here, mark your waist circumference divided by 4. Mark that point there, then add 1 inch that the dart will be taking in. So that's my waist. Then 1 inch for the dart. I'm replacing that like this, and 1.5 inch sewing allowance at the side of this. And moving on to the hip line, I'm getting my hip circumference divided by 4. Mine is about 9.25, so I'm just marking that. And for the hip we don't have that, so I'm just going to add in my seam allowance. And on my hemline, I'm marking my hip circumference divided by 4. And on my hemline, I'm not going to add any allowance because I want my dress to go like pencil, to be a pencil dress. So yeah, and at this point I'm just connecting all my outer points like that. And on the hip area, be sure to use a curve. If you have a curved rule, use it. If you don't have it, go in with a pencil first, like I always do, because it's a technique that works. Well, it works for me, so I would advocate for it. At this point, I'm adding my allowance at the bottom part. So I'm using 1 inch for the allowance at the bottom part. Then we will be done with this part of the dress. So zip with the part without the zip allowance. When I'll be cutting my front pattern, I'll just fold in my zip allowance like this. I'll just fold it all through. After, like, when I'll be laying this on my fabric, then I'll be cutting the front part. And for the back part, I'll be opening up the zip allowance, then I'll cut the skirt out like that. But I'll be showing you all this because we are going to cut this together, so you don't need to worry in case you're not understanding what I'm saying. I'll show you that. Okay, so I'm just going to cut this cut out, then we will work on that lapel, that overlap that's on the skirt. Moving on to the overlap, what you're going to do, you're going to place your skirt on top of the pattern like this. Then you're going to trace the top part and the side part of the skirt. So just pin it down to prevent the skirt from moving while doing what? While tracing, so that you don't get a wrong pattern. After tracing the top and the side, because that's the only part that you need to trace, from the edge of the zip allowance, you're going to go out by 1 inch. From that point where our skirt pattern ends, I've gone out by 1 inch. Okay, then come down to this bottom part of the skirt and mark 3 inches like that. So you marking 3 inches, then you just squaring this line across. You're just connecting it with a straight line, the way you're seeing me doing, like this. Okay, now because you know what I'm trying to do is to make this overlap longer than the main skirt, the main dress, because I saw it on the photo, it was a little bit longer. Now from this corner, I'm going to mark 5 inches in. From the corner, I'm going in with 5 inches. Then you see this point that I've marked. I'll be connecting this point to this point that I marked earlier. Okay, so I'll just take out my pattern, then I'll join that with my ruler. Now for the sleeve, this pattern is on my channel. In case you don't know how to draft a basic sleeve, it's in my channel, so I don't want to take much of your time starting through this again. That's why I'm just going to trace this out. I'm going to trace it up to the elbow point, because that's where I want my straight sleeve to reach. Then the lower part will be for the flared section, the section that is flaring all the way to the wrist. So I'll put the pattern I want to trace on beneath this sleeve. Just make sure the pattern is wide enough to accommodate the sleeve that we are going to trace out. Then just hold this down with pins to make sure your pattern is not moving, because if you are tracing and the pattern is moving, trust me, you're going to get something that is so weird. So just pin them down like this before tracing. This is how the sleeve is looking, so I'm just going to bold it out for you to see clearly with my green mark pen. And remember to indicate your front part and the back part, because if you don't write in, you might as well confuse. Yeah, so you can add in notches, or you can just write the initials the way I've done. Once everything is clear, from the tip of your sleeve, from this point, go down by 3 inches. Because, okay, for the main bodice, I went down by 4, but for the sleeve, I'm going down by 3. But you can still go down by 4, it's not a big issue. Okay, yeah, but all can work, any can work. You can go down by 4, the exact that you used on your bodice, or you can go down, you can reduce that by 1 inch and go down by 3. They both work, trust me. You'll cut that out and remember to add notches just to know where is the front and where is the back. You can add 2 notches on the front and 1 at the back. Okay, for the flading part of the sleeve, you're going to fold this like the way you will fold your circle skirt or your circle dress. You folding it into 2, then you're folding it again into 2, so that you have four layers of fabric here, of pattern of fabric, if you're doing it straight to your fabric. So it will look like this after folding. Okay, now multiply your wrist circumference by 2. Mine is 10. When I multiplied by 2, I got 20. Okay, now divide that 20 by 4, because we have 4 layers of paper here. Then that's the 5. The 5 inch is what I'm going to place at this corner. Okay, like this. Just mark the 5, then go ahead and make a curve here. Just mark from one point to the corner and see what you have. Then you're going to mark that whatever you have all the way round to form a curve, the way you see me doing. Now from this curve that you've just created, you're going to insert the measurement from your elbow to your wrist, that measurement. So for you basically getting the measurement of the lower part of your sleeve, the section that's going to fled. Okay, then you're just marking it round like this. The reason why I multiplied my elbow circumference by 2 is because that that sleeve of the dress has some folds like so. I'll be showing it in the screen for you guys to see. So that's why I added volume to my flare.